All right, we are live. Today, we're going to talk about how to build an online community, practical tips for getting unstuck, unlocking talent from within, and maximizing your output, and even what it's like running a boba delivery startup in San Francisco by interviewing Mercury, a community building expert and the creator of Picky, a chat startup backed by the earliest investors in Snapchat, Discord, and Kakao Talk. Welcome to the Inner Creator with Peter Su, a podcast dedicated to helping rising creators learn more about the art and business of being a creator and helping you improve your inner game, your confidence, mindset, and emotional well-being. I'm your host, Peter Su. I'm a former investment banker at Goldman Sachs, turned singer-songwriter, turned content creator here in San Francisco. And today, our special guest is Mercury. She's my friend and former coworker at DCM Ventures and the co-founder and creator of Picky, a group chat app for communities based in San Francisco that helps people build deeper and more meaningful bonds through shared hobbies, goals, and a lot more. Before Picky, Mercury founded Sweet a Little, a popular on-demand boba delivery startup in the SF Bay Area, and was a venture capital associate at DCM Ventures, where we met, and got her master's degree in MSc from Stanford. She's extremely sincere, as you're going to find out, creative and resilient, and really interesting founder, startup founder, and creative, who I think I've learned a lot from, and that we can all learn a lot from just being creative entrepreneurs. So Mercury, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello,
How are you
hello.
doing?
We're gonna have some fun.
Well, just to do a fun warm up. Besides Picky, what's one of your favorite communities that you're a part of, and why?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this. I'm a huge fan of Healthy Gamer GG, which is Dr. K's community. It's a lot of it is for gamers, right? But I find their content super helpful. I'm a very casual gamer, but I love, just hearing the inner struggles about gamers and learning from, how to combat some of these things. So that's my favorite community. They have, I think, a Discord. I mostly hang out on their subreddit. And they also have like a huge YouTube channel where they stream like therapy talks. Sometimes they break down, Reddit posts. So highly recommended.
Yeah, I after you told me about them, I checked them out. It's amazing. Like, it's a community of gamers that like are working on their mental health and like yeah. Well, quick shout out to the audience that's joined us today. Shout out to Live Joyfully Design, Professor Gold. Hello, Lila. All right. Hope you're all doing well. And let's dive in. So just, yeah. So Mercury's, like, starting at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what that was like? What was your childhood dream as a kid?
Yeah, so I was born in China, and I guess we can talk about this. I had Asperger's as a kid, still have. And so I got sent away from home at the age of 6 to boarding schools that are better for my development needs. So I've been like basically floating around the world on my own for many years. Spent most of my time in the USA, and so I feel like now that we're talking about communities, I noticed that since I'm on my own all the time, I just have this like intuition of like constantly finding group of people to hang out with wherever I end up. And childhood dream was like completely unrelated. I wanted to be a detective for the longest time. I love reading detective books and stories. Probably like somewhere along the lines of like curiosity. It is a little bit dark for a child, I would say. Sometimes like the murder scenes and all that, but my dream has been detective, and in the most recent years, it has become like stand-up comedian. But that's yeah.
Can we ask you to break us off a joke real quick?
Like this is not the day, but yeah. Hopefully, like I'm just like okay, I need to go to open mics to embarrass myself soon to start my journey there.
Awesome. So it's a detective to stand-up comedian turned VC turned startup founder. Like, I actually did it was on my bucket list to do a stand-up comedy set. And
We should go together. I
yeah,
know some
yeah.
good spots in SF.
No, I ended up going to a few, and I
Oh,
bombed, and
really?
definitely. definitely feels good I did it. And you respect comedians a lot more after. Well, can you tell us a little bit more? So you were in China, you were in boarding schools, and you've been moving around a lot, and then you were in the US, and then I know like you went to USC. Like, what led you to more of that traditional path that we've talked about, that we both have been a part of, like you, iBanking, venture capital? Like, what kind of brought you to that phase of your life?
It was really simple for me. Like I just wanted a visa. This sounds really stupid, but for me, it was really hard to get like an H-1B visa for someone like me back then. So I had to figure out the best way to do that. And I think like, banking in retrospect was like one of the very few options that would actually sponsor expensive visa for like students from Canada. So I moved different countries. I was in Canada before this. So yeah, no, it's like really simple. I wish there's some more glorious answer. It's just like, well, okay, like there are only few jobs like banking, consulting that they would put up with like the visa sponsorship.
Yeah, I've never heard of that as a rationale. I usually hear money and prestige for people that get into finance.
I think
So
it,
that's
it
cool.
it has something to do with it because like I tried interviewing for some like sales jobs, but they didn't. They're more like, oh, like we're commission based and stuff like that. So there wasn't even this option. So it really eliminated like 95% of jobs out there on the market for me. So it's like pretty simple. Okay, like I just gotta do this.
Well, so you were in banking, and I know we have a lot of mutual friends from your like the same firm and everything. Like, and then you joined DCM, which is where we both worked. Um, like what got you into VC? Like in banking, everyone can do so many different things. Like,
Yeah, so I feel like that's one of these like subconscious things that lead you to like closer to who you really are, right? So like I love the creativity like aspect of VC where it's less about numbers, it's more about like betting on people very early on. You have a lot of opportunity to meet interesting founders who sometimes I work on insane problems like supersonic like jets or cube satellites or like I remember just seeing all these demos of founders like doing weird ass shit and I'm like I am in. So compared to other paths out of banking, like continuing banking or doing private equity, something like that, it wasn't as compelling as VC where the job itself, I feel like it's not 100% creative or like 80% creative, but the fact that you just get bombarded with like you know people and ideas that are just like insane, that's like 5 to 10 years ahead of the market, that aspect is so rewarding. And I know like I don't know, like I feel like that's something that you enjoy. That's what I heard people saying, like, oh, Peter is like the networking whore, he loves going to South by Southwest. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I got you.
yeah, I actually I always tell people like VC was one of the best jobs I've ever had, and I think I actually want to do it like when I'm like down the line when I have like built some of my own
When
businesses,
you're
like.
old.
Oh yeah, and then also when I feel like I have the actual experience as a entrepreneur to like really help entrepreneurs, because I guess the downside I had when we were in it was I felt like I was giving armchair advice, like, oh, I've been to so many board meetings and I've seen this pattern. So when you ask me about like how to do your go to market after your Series B, this is what I've seen from other companies. It just felt like.
Very
And then
empty. Like,
you have all this prestige, and you're supposed to carry yourself like you know everything, and then but then I felt like I didn't know anything, and I
hell
was like,
no. Like,
so
oh my
I was
God.
like, I want to get that. I actually really respect those entrepreneurs. I want to do what they're doing. Yeah.
Same. No, I had no idea what I was doing. And that's like terrifying. And I feel like maybe that kind of filters people out like us, because I know some other like young junior associates who enter the industry who are on partner track, like they're comfortable kind of like with the ambiguity. I feel like, as I'm just making this up, but I feel like as a creator, you kind of have this drive to dig to the bottom of things, or like, be more on the ground. Like I really enjoyed touring like company offices and like looking at their prototypes back then. Is that really necessary for investments? I wouldn't say 100% necessary, but I feel like for me, it's like, okay, it's really important for me to understand like this, like how everything works. And I feel uncomfortable giving, like you said, like advice or anything, right? Like it's more like I stole this idea from this company and I give this to the other company. It was very terrifying in my mind, and I couldn't live with myself like long enough for doing that.
Well, I mean, to be fair to our friends in VC, like I do know like there are good people that have never been operators and they're just good investors. Like I think they
Yeah,
find ways to be
exactly.
helpful. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think, people could also come from like different backgrounds, like non-operating backgrounds. And as sad as I am saying this, I think there's like a study quoted that like the non-operator investors have like better returns, like, outsized returns. So
Wow.
just,
That
yeah,
I didn't,
yeah.
that's surprising. Like I wonder
It's
if
from
that's
a recent
because
podcast by All In, the All In podcast from Jason Calacanis and Chamath and David Sachs and Dave Friedberg. So like Chamath talked about this, and I was like, oh my god, interesting.
and for everybody out there, like yeah, so I was a few years earlier before Mercury joined DCM, and it's like a Series A early stage cross-border fund. Like I think when I joined, we were managing like 2 billion. I think when you joined, it was like 3. Now it's up to like 4 billion. So like
Mm-hmm.
that's the background for the audience on kind of that part of our lives, investing in startups. Like, so Merc, can you tell us like what led you from investing in startups? You're seeing all these ideas, all these founders. Like what got you to make that jump? Because I think it's something that a lot of some VC associates do, but then other people are super risk averse. They go straight to B school. They go partner track in the VC route. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
what got you to like push you over that edge? Yeah.
Okay. So again, we're just gonna be very real. So what happened to me? There was like once I was sourcing a deal. I was, presenting to the partnership. I really wanted them to invest in the deal. I'm not gonna mention the company, and they did really well. So the founder dragged me into one of our like offices. I think back then it was like Carl's office. He sat me down. He's like, you're really talented. Why the fuck are you here? And I'm just like shook. And he's like, you should come work with me. Here's what we do to create value in the world. Gave me this whole speech. So he was like, literally, I was pitching his company. I'm hoping that we could invest as a firm. But he just sat me down, gave me the speech. I think that really shook me. And that's like the beginning of everything, like eventually happening. That was like the beginning of it. I was like, wow, like, you're someone I really respect, because I went to their offices. I saw their team is like amazing. And he gave me this whole spiel, and I was like, oh my god, you're kind of convincing me. I didn't end up joining them. I joined a different startup, but that kind of gave me a glimpse of, wow, like this is someone I respect, and he sees the operator back then, right? Operator, or like not founder, but he sees the operator in me. I thought I was some, clueless person floating around, like peddling knowledge that I stole somewhere else. But that's what got me started.
Well, wait. Okay, so before you joined DCM, like I know, like there's typical exit ops that everyone in finance thinks about, like the go to B school, stay in VC, start so your own. Like what were you thinking before you joined DCM?
I actually told them during my interview that I wanted to start a company, but I was also talking out of my ass because I had no idea what that entails. And I just thought it was something vaguely cool, as a cool concept in my head. And for background, I've always been like a maker myself. So when I was like 3 years old, even my parents told me that I was dragging toolboxes around the house and disassembling TV and microwave and, destroying things and putting them back together with like a lot of excess parts that I don't know how to put back. So I always had this like, I don't know, like this like compulsion to make things. So I create, I'm a Lego designer casually. I like tinker with things all the time. I have no idea how to translate that into like, doing a startup or like creating a project, but I intuitively know that's like something I wanted to do. Just like right now I say, I want to be a stand-up comedian. I don't even have a joke here today, right? Like I'm clearly unprepared, but one can dream and you'll eventually get there. So
Well, someone reminded me, another YouTube friend yesterday. He was like, there's that, you might have heard of the Ira Glass quote, like when you start off making stuff, you have good taste. It's just that your chops haven't caught up with your taste yet. And that's like all the reps. And I'm like, for me, whenever I hear that quote, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like I just got to keep putting in the reps, getting better.
yeah, that's totally true.
Well, like I remember last time we talked to you, you were talking about how you felt like you in finance, investing, like you felt like more like you were asleep. And then you woke up and yeah, you can never go back. Like, and in a way I feel like that resonates a lot with me too. Like, but yeah, can you tell us in the audience, like, how did you wake up? What got you to join that first startup? What led you to starting Sweet a Little and then Picky?
Yeah, I feel like it's the feeling of getting in touch with yourself. And this is like where I have a question for you about like, leaving a an industry that people consider, oh, like you're on the fast track, then going into music, which is something you really love. For me, it felt like, well, like now, like before that, it felt like I'm in touch with 20% of actual me, right? And then like creating things and actually like doing something that is creative makes me feel like, oh, I'm in touch with like 80% of me. Like there's still like plenty of room to go, but then I just feel like, oh, I am being me. And I think that's like once you get a taste of like you being fully you, or like very much fully you, I think that kind of feeling is unbeatable for like any external stuff, whether that's like money or prestige or I don't know, all these things. So that's how I feel. I don't know, like what made you like, just like take the leap of faith, just like, hey, I'm gonna do music from here on.
Yeah, I think it was like a slow process where, so when I was at banking at Goldman before VC, I was writing lyrics on my BlackBerry, and I would go to Pandora back when they were big. I would look at their site to see if they had any jobs. Um, and then after Goldman, I was like, okay, I want to at least do something in the music industry. So I found a music label in China, and then I interned there that summer just to see what it's like at a label. So at least I just
Wow.
cold emailed all these music labels in China, and then one of them took me, and I was just like their roadie, and I just went to shows. And then when I got to DCM, like, and for me, when I was in banking, it's like, you know how it is, right? The first 6 months for a 2-year program, they expect you to, for the audience, like they expect you to basically, people come and recruit you because it's usually like the smartest finance people from top colleges. So you need to decide in 6 months what you're going to do for something 2 years out. And for me, it's like, okay, if I do mega fund PE, I can make a ton of money, and it's like banking part 2, like and like Merk, this, like, but I was like pretty, I'm probably depressed as an investment banker. Like that was, and then I didn't want part 2, even if it was a lot more money and prestige. But VC, I just like the idea of actually creating businesses and jobs and products instead of like cutting costs to boost margins and stuff. So that's broadly where I was thinking. And then when I was in VC, and I was like, oh, hopefully it'll give me a little more time to like try things on the side too, like music, side hustles. But then, yeah, I got into VC. I was actually enjoying it a lot, and I didn't really have that much time. And then the whole time everyone's asking me what I'm wanting to do, and it's like, I would say like the stuff I think people expected to hear, I'd be like, I'm thinking about going to B school, maybe staying in VC longer, and then I'd slip in, well, making music for people. Like I would just slip that in, and then
The
I
truth
kept
comes
writing.
out, and
Yeah, it- yeah,
so
I would keep writing, and then but then basically I was like writing music like at home, like lyrics, and then I thought of being a startup founder too, because like probably like your experience, I met like Joe from Ren Ren and all these people doing really interesting things, and they were passionate about it, and I realized the big difference between me and them was like I wasn't doing what I was passionate about. I wasn't taking the risk. But then yeah, I think it was DCM. It was like 2 points. They offered me to stay longer for like the third year potential partner
that's
track.
when your heart sank, and you're like, no, this is not what I want.
It was
Is
a
that
tough choice. It was a tough choice.
mm,
It was that wasn't as clear actually, because I actually like being there. I enjoyed like what you're saying, like meeting people, finding ways to like
yep,
connect
yep.
people. Like I actually really love doing that.
You're good at it. Yeah.
Uh and it felt really validating, as you know, like the head partner, like kind of it's hard to read him. So when he said good job, it felt really good. It kind of in a weird Asian parent way,
I
like
think there's a lot of truth in it. Like you are really good at this. I'm just kind of like providing a objective, third party perspective. I think I think that's just like a innate skill or something you carry, that like you getting on these podcasts with these interesting people. Like I think that is like one of the things you are really good at, and it's useful in so many places, in almost all places, I would argue.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Like actually one of the most affirming experiences from DCM was, I think before I didn't work with like the head partner that much, like one of the head partners, like but we went to South bys together, and then I think he saw me in action, and then right after
Yeah,
that, that's when they
yeah.
promoted me. Like,
Okay, okay,
and it
okay.
felt super good because I think I was like, I didn't know exactly how well I was doing. Like it just felt good to be seen in that way. But yeah, I just kind of knew that. I feel super like lucky that, I could have the chance to go to Stanford and golf and have drinks at these fancy places. But when I thought about my life being like that forever, it just didn't seem like, yeah, it didn't seem like the 100% life like that. Yeah, you're talking about. And yeah,
then then we become starving artists.
yeah,
Sorry,
well,
sorry to
well,
put your
so
hot button.
that was the first milestone, and then the second milestone, and quick shout out to Anna and Professor Gold for the funny jokes. But yeah, the second marker was like, there was this really hot startup, Turntable FM, if you remember them, and they got so much, were blowing up, and then I had been talking about doing my own startup with like Carl and different people, just brainstorming, and but then one day, the head partner threw it out. It's like, hey, why don't we just give you like $1 million to seed you to start like a music tech startup? And I think it was at that point where it felt really weird. I was like, I should be super happy, but like I feel really heavy. It feels like I'm
Mm,
really tightening up.
mm.
And then when I thought about it, it's like, oh, it's because if me doing a startup right now is to be cool and to make money, like which I try
Yeah,
with banking.
not for the right reasons, or for the, like, your true self. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I
so it
think
was, and then
yeah.
when I told my parents that, they were like, at first they
Like
wanted me to go to B school, but then when I told them I wanted to do a startup, and then when I told them I wanted to do music instead of the startup, they're like, "Dude, go do the startup, go do the startup." Like,
they're like, your head has some damage. Like some damage has happened. Like,
y-
oh my
yeah,
god.
they were like, "Oh, you're talented in music, but how talented are you really? Like, it's the odds are so crazy." And I was like, I know the odds, but I believe I can do it, and if we disaggregate the data, I think I can do it. And but I think that the moment I remember is I was in that little small conference room in the office, and I had a call with another banking friend, and I hung up, and I just felt like super my intuition was super strong. Like when I thought about music, I definitely felt expansive, and I didn't know where it would lead, but I was excited. Um So that got me up to like closer to the 100%.
Oh, that's such a magical feeling. I think it's like, those are the things that like once you experience once, you're like, oh good, like I feel so in touch with my body, like my mind is in touch with my body. The stars are aligning, right? Even though in the outside world, it's like, well, like okay, no money or like, no prestige or like super hard, like what if, tons of what ifs. But I think it's like, coming back to the theme of like the inner creator, I think that's like kind of the feeling that like you wouldn't trade anything for.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely look at that feeling in that little conference room. Like I was really sure. Yeah. Like it's not like I had the $1 million in hand, but even the idea of potentially getting seed funding to just go off and do a startup, like it was like a very night and day feeling when I thought when I thought about that, I was like, when I thought about doing music, I was like, yeah. So I'll definitely
That's so
think,
healthy.
yeah.
That is so healthy. I think like looking back, I really appreciate like sometimes like I feel like for people who's like a lot older, a lot more accomplished, they say these kind of things just to force the real you out of you. Like I don't know if all of them do that like consciously all the time, but I do think like a lot of times like you have to put yourself in a situation where you have to choose, right? And it's like real stakes like on the line, and then where you just know, okay, this is my real thing. Or sometimes you flip a coin, you're like heads this, tails this, and then you flip heads, you're like, nah, let's flip again, right? Let's flip again. And it's like, no, you just want tail. Okay, like you just follow that inner voice.
Oh yeah, I've heard that's a good exercise. Just flip it, and then how you feel about the flip will tell you.
Yeah,
like
like
what
you
you
kind of have
actually
to
want.
do it to like force it out, right? Like, or I've heard versions like, get, I don't know, it's like Valentine's Day. Now all the roses are on like afterwards. Like you just pull the petals, like yes, no, this flower's done. It's like, no, you're like, nah, let's get another flower. It's like, okay, after like 3 flowers, you're like, it's pretty clear what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for you, when you realize like you had that meeting with that founder and then he pulled you and he's like, hey, I see you have so much potential to do your own thing or operate, not just invest. Like, yeah, what led you, like, what was the path that led you basically to doing what you're doing today? Like through to Sweet a Little to Picky.
Okay, so this is gonna be a really interesting segue into communities because ever since, and by the way, this founder is like very charismatic and he's doing another startup right now. I love what he's doing. It's like has something to do with like streaming content, but anyways, so like he was it was like a savage talk. He's just like, what the fuck are you doing here? At the time, he's like, well, you're wasting your talent, all that stuff. So it was like a very energetic like speech like that. And so it shook me. And then, but I knew at the time that I can't just like come out and do my own thing. There's a lot of like legal, like again, like visa, like immigration issues you have to solve. So I started Shinect, which is a community for immigrants who are currently working at like Google, Facebook, or like Oracle or whatnot. And then the whole purpose of this community is about like converting people from entrepreneurs into entrepreneurs and like providing all the
That's
support.
a good tagline.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I kind of need a community. So I also had a co-host. So we started this thing. And like a lot of us are like from China, like or Canada or India, like anyone who's like facing similar challenges. And I brought in like law firms, accounting firms, like IP lawyers, just like talking about, okay, what are the challenges like that you need to be aware of? Like, okay, what kind of like co-founder you need or board members you need in order to actually do this? If you have to have someone hire you even if you're a founder. So like solving a lot of these, and then having like hosting hackathon nights. It's like, okay, you've never done an app, like now let's like so and so is like right now making the Facebook app, right? Like let's do this hackathon. So we had like hackathon nights, like having people create like websites, apps. So like just getting everyone very, like I guess like familiar with like how things could work, and then like work in small groups. Like, okay, we're gonna do this week. So we have like lots of activities like that. So like preparing people like mentally and like legally, I don't know, like accounting wise, all these different things.
Mhm.
And so yeah, like that's like the one of the communities that I feel very proud of. I think like I ended up like recruiting other people to run the community after I had left, to start my startup journey. But I think like at the time we like pulled 50 people out of these big companies, started their own ventures, and I think people collectively raised more than $300 million worth of like venture capital. And I thought that was like really impactful, including my own, right? Like for me, like I raised money, I came out like a lot of like complexities, like but working through these around these. So yeah, no, that's like how like there was a ramp like from the shock, like this founder gave me this talk in the office to eventually coming out. There's like a long ramp of like I think all these community things that we did together really helped understanding like what's needed.
Did you start Shyneck like after DCM, or was it a thing you did like on the side for a bit and then you kind of made the jump?
While at DCM, while at
Mhm.
DCM. In fact, if so successful, so I sourced some deals. Like I don't think we actually invested, but it was like high quality deals. Again, like the founder being one of them. And it was so cool that like our head partner actually gave us like budget, wanting to become official sponsor for the club. So like DCM as a firm wanting to play a role there. So it was like all in all really amazing. Yeah, and later on, I think people were also doing some like recruiting in the group. So like some people, they want to do startups, but they don't necessarily want to be founders, right? So if you're like a really cool engineer or tech lead or something, you're looking for people who are starting to join, then like it's also like a very good place to find people who are like-minded and like do something, like make things happen.
Were you scared when you're so I think you were there for 3 years, right? Was it scary when your 3rd year was up, or were you like, I'm ready to like shift gears and
Oh, I think it was like when I decided to join the startup that I found, it was like only 3 early founders, so I was the 4th like co-founder, you can say. It wasn't my company, but I thought it was so cool. It's like food delivery, very similar to DoorDash. Um, when I found the team, I love them so much and they love me so much. It was like pretty abrupt conversation. I'm like, hey, I found this company. I really want to join. I think despite all the advice against it, that's like when I felt like, okay, I need to do this. I really need to do this. And so it wasn't like a progression of, oh, like 3 years, 2 years is up. It's really just like, well, like, okay, I found this team. Um, yeah.
oh, so you left like mid. Oh, interesting. So you really had a ton of conviction. Like it was like, I got to do this, and I'm like,
I
can we
think
work this transition out? Wow.
yeah, like it's like very. I think I am generally pretty impulsive. I think a lot of the times, like creators, right? Like you have this creative impulse, and then you're kind of like impulsive on different dimensions, like on different people. That is good and bad, but I do think that is a superpower. So like at the time, again, like no money, right? Like I moved into a frat house with them. We were just like cranking on the service, the app, and all that. It was like super sketchy, but it was so like it was so enjoyable. Like when you're young, you have like tons of energy. You're like not thinking like again. That was like the real starving founder story. For the longest time, we didn't pay ourselves anything and raised a little bit of money, paid like very minimal, minimal money. So it was, but no, it was it was really fun. Again, like it was very impulsive, but I think being a human, it's like YOLO, right? You only live once. You gotta indulge your impulse sometimes. I'm the advocate of that. I know like older people listening are probably cringing, but I do think indulging that impulse is not is not always bad. It could be really awesome sometimes.
So looking back, you feel like that was a good call for you.
I think like if you look at financial outcome and like all that stuff is not, but then it goes back to like again the music thing you were talking about in your journey, right? You just know like is that what you need? Question mark. Is that what you want? 100%, 120%. So you just gotta pursue it. So it was like that.
Yeah, when I look back on music, financially it didn't work out. But then and I wasn't like I didn't hit my I think my goal of being like a big band like Weezer or something. But when I look back, I'm like, even though nothing like the external stuff, some of it didn't work out. Like I'm like, would I do it again? I'm like, yeah, I definitely do it again. And that's something I
Right.
needed to do in my life. And I know it's gonna yeah, it's getting me closer to like 100%. I feel like in VC, I was like at maybe 50% of who I was, but like the creative aspect, like, cause I love business and, we talk about business and stuff, but the creative part, the emotional part, connecting with people, like music got me like a lot closer to 100%, even though some other stuff didn't work out. So it's cool to hear that with joining the food delivery startup, like YOLO, you would still go for it.
Yeah, I suspect like that's like the one thing that gets creators going. Like our stories are just like, if you extract the meta stories, that's probably, my belief is like it happens like to all creators like every single day, like all human beings, right? Like one thing that's really awesome that I realized years later is like if you want to be the number one at something, like only you can be the best at being you. Nobody can ever beat you in that. And so that's like something if you're not yourself and trying to pretend to be someone else, you're never be as good as them at being them. It
Yeah.
logically makes sense. It wasn't like understood by me, like, but then now understanding that is like, okay, like this is insurance. If I want to be the best at something, I need to be myself because that's the only way. There's no other way.
How did you lead into that? Cause like being myself has been something I always try to do. And when I first started doing that because of music, like in high school, I felt like I could be myself because of bands like Weezer and stuff. But I mean, I'm in my 30s. I still struggle with being myself. There's like social pressure from family, friends, perceived or not actually there. But like, for me, it's hard. And I'm sure a lot of listeners feel that way. Like, how did
Oh,
you
it is hard.
how'd you get closer to 20 from 20 to like 50 to higher, of like who you are?
I think like first of all, let's just acknowledge that like what you just described is like, I don't know, like I bet 99% of people face this challenge. And it is terrifying to be yourself. And it's I feel like it's probably a gradual process, right? It's not like it just happens overnight. And it just takes many, like maybe like thousands and millions of like little tries of pushing the boundary. Like you push a little bit today, and then tomorrow you push a little bit more, or like in a different direction. And then over time, your comfort zone just expands. I do think that's why I believe like I really like anonymous online platforms like Piggy, for example, is anonymous, and like Reddit is anonymous, like because I feel there's a lot of pressure to perform when I'm on Facebook being the actual person. Like people know me, like these are my college friends, these are, family members. But then like in, sometimes like I do these like micro experiments, like I say something really outrageous, like, but really what I think. But then you put it out there on Reddit, like people can downvote you to hell, or sometimes like people upvote you to heaven. And so like I feel like structuring these like little micro experiments of like more being you, like, oh, this is what I actually think is not PC, but then this is what I actually think. I feel like where I could see people getting stuck, and certainly where I was stuck, is you have this non-PC thought and you just like, whoa, like how can I think that way? And you just shut it down. Right. That's like the external like tyrant, like shutting you down. So you just miss that opportunity for being yourself or closer to being yourself. Maybe that's like too outrageous of a belief or opinion, but if you don't even push in that direction a little bit, you can't really course correct or like swing back to somewhere in between, right? So I yeah, so I'm a huge believer of like, and same thing like with stand-up comedy. Like maybe you can bomb at like a 5 people like open mic bar that's like, the bar is struggling and the bar is not getting much business, right? So like, I believe in like constant little experiments to like evolve and then expand into like your own skin.
Yeah, and just a pro tip, definitely tip your bartenders, especially at those open mics, because they go through a lot listening to bad jokes.
They're suffering.
Let me just tell you that. It's as a guest, as someone sitting there, those are some pretty bad jokes. You have to sit there, but some are good. But like for the micro step, okay. So if we go back, you joined the food delivery startup, you're in the frat house. Like, what's one other little micro step that you look back on and you're like, oh, that really got me even closer? Like you took a big step, right? You're like, you joined it, but then what was like the next thing that nudged you?
I think it's like you are actually coming from, so like, I feel like when you're an investor, you're looking at the company from like, 30,000 feet, like in the sky, right? But then like actually making things, just like creator, like you're actually, I don't know, drawing things on paper or on your iPad. It's like very, very like concrete, down to earth stuff. So when I first joined, I had to make that huge adjustment because at the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, like I'm just going to hide in this corner and do some sort of analysis. Like, that is not what startups need, right? Like startup need like, things need to go. Like if things are breaking, like you need to fix it right there. So I remember at the time, like the CEO was like yelling at me, be like, why are you sitting here? Like, why are you not in a delivery car? So I'm like, okay, let me get into the car, deliver some food, or like sit in some other like Dasher's car, like just deliver some food. And you just learn so much about that. How life actually works, as weird as it sounds. I think like for people who like, you work a desk job, like knowledge work, intellectual work, a lot of times like without being in touch with reality, like that there's anxiety, there's also, you missing out on stuff. So I think for me, the next big adjustment is like physically start doing actual work. That was like, okay, you're not like analyzing. Analyzing is like someone is doing something and then you are watching them, you're performing a secondary type of work, is like a derivative work, versus like you're actually like, this with my boba startup, is like you're actually in the kitchen, like the fire is about to burn my hair, like this, I mean, I'm about to burn myself. I'm carrying like a 40-pound pot that's full of boba that's about to spill, is like scary as shit, and I'm about to cry, like it's that kind of like actually doing things, making things. And that was like a big adjustment, but I think that cuts away a lot of the anxiety because you're like you're just like, down to earth. You have like both feet like firmly on the ground.
Yeah, that reminds me of that, I think it's the Eleanor Roosevelt quote that like Brene Brown always talks about. It's like it's, you can be the spectator in the ring or even the emperor giving the thumbs up or whatever, but it's different than being the person in the arena, like with the dust in their hands facing down the lion. Like I definitely felt that too,
so
like
different.
being a musician, and it makes me feel alive. Yeah, it's very different. Well, can you tell us like, so why did you start Sweet a Little? And for the audience, Sweet a Little, it was this boba delivery startup that delivered boba on demand throughout the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley. And I mean, my startup, we like would use Sweet a Little a lot, and it would make our day. It really did make our days better. And I remember.
Oh my God, I did not know about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of I know you guys weren't you in like Airbnb and a lot of big offices.
We were
right?
viral. We were viral in the Bay Area. We have, it's the extent how popular we exist in a lot of companies, like meeting notes and recruiting videos. As I later learned, they're like, hey, join like Scale AI. This is what we do every afternoon. We like jam together. There's like tons of Sweet a Little like drinks. So it's really funny. And some other companies. So I started the company because it was sort of like an episode 2 to the food delivery startup that I joined. Company ended up being just acqui-hired by Google Shopping Express.
Hmm.
It was just burning. There was no real business model like at that little scale, and then it was like burning too much cash, and then it was really hard to sustain. So for me, I felt like I had a lot of knowledge about like on-demand delivery. And one thing that struck me the most that like I desperately wanted to create the kind of experience is like what got me really to join the food delivery startup was that there were some like old people in bed at the Stanford Hospital at the time, and their family is not around. And then we were able to deliver hot food to them. And so they're not, eating hospital food or like getting stuff out of the vending machine. That to me, I think that really was something that kind of, it's like, that's the thing that like, if there's like one thing that makes me feel like, oh, there's like, I want to do this. I want to create this experience. That was the thing. And then so for me, like the impact of having something physical, whether that's like food or drinks or some like care package or something like being able to like deliver to a person in need is not about on demand. It's more about like giving that person like a very concrete manifestation of like, hey, like you are seen and you're loved in this world. Like that was like what I was trying to create with Sweet a Little. And I was like, okay, food is really hard to do, as we all know it. How about like drinks or like caffeinated drinks? Like you're getting some good energy for sure, right? Like that's what made me start. Also, like drinks are a lot easier operationally compared to food. So that's kind of, and then I wanted to, take it one step further. So I designed the whole cup to be like a blank canvas. It could be, drawn or like any little handwritten note or like funny art or whatever can be put onto the cup when we're making it. So that's what inspired Sweet a Little.
So you were actually delivering happiness, like you actually were, because I remember.
Oh yeah,
you told me that you would your baristas would like write a little note and it's personal, like. And I remember I got a delivery once from someone. I think she was a delivery person that she was Japanese, and
Hana, yeah, we love her.
Yeah, I remember you telling me you wanted people to showcase their personality, and even when she delivered it to me, she like bowed, and I took the cup, and I was like, "Whoa, this is like a real experience."
Super
like,
cute.
Like Mirka was like, "This is real," and
oh yeah, it totally. I like at the time we were it's ridiculous as it sounds, and I've been like mocked by investors who turned me down like in my face. We were saying like, okay, the way we measure our like what is the North Star in the company, right? Like, the startup jargon, like every company has a North Star metric that you pursue. We literally named a metric called moments of love delivered. So like MOL, we're like, oh, 1 mole. So it's like one drink that's like successful. If it's not successful, like wrong thing or didn't deliver, so it's gonna be like subtract. So we had like a metric that's called moments of love. And I remember pitching investors, that's probably naive, but I pitching investors like this, and then I just remember investors just like, well, like we have zero investment thesis in investing in moments of love, or like, what the hell is this, But then I thought, I think like in retrospect, like I probably should pitch it like externally, have something very boring, concrete, like very industry standard, but internally we aligned everything like operations and branding, everything to that, like deliver that moment of love to people every time they get the drink.
Were there any investors that actually believed in the momol, like
the mole?
The mole.
Yeah, we had investors. I think like those people probably like more believed in us, like the team, to make it work. Like they can look beyond what we're saying, which is, I think, like, a sign of like the type of people that you like, at least I would want to partner with. Like you could be ridiculous or you could be quirky. I think if they appreciate it or they can look beyond that, that's like, obviously for the people, hundreds of people who turned me down, like they don't believe in that, but there are you just need a few people to believe in you. So
Well, can you take us through, like, you did the food delivery part 1, Sweet a Little was kind of food delivery part 2. Like, how did you take what you learned from the first part 1 into part 2? Because I feel like that's such a huge part of being a creator and entrepreneur. Like, we learn, we succeed, we make mistakes, we keep iterating, we keep going, we keep improving. Like, and I know you've done that. So yeah, can you take us through a little bit of that?
yeah, I think at the time, a lot of the stuff that I took away was more like very operational stuff, like how to deliver things with efficiency. Because in order to make it work, like you have to, like, to make people wait for hours is not an option, right? So there's like a very heavy operational component of it. And since I have done on-demand food delivery before, I'm one of these like few people who actually know how like on-demand delivery works, which is like extremely challenging operationally. And so I took those to Sweet a Little, and we were able to like break even, like profitably, like deliver those things and very quickly. So like if you're like, I remember back then Airbnb, sometimes they would treat their entire engineering team, which is like 100 something, like ahead of a product launch or at a product launch, we would deliver like hundreds of like on demand, like freshly made boba to them. And that is within like an hour and a half. Like, this is not, we don't have any information in advance. That is like, in order to pull that off, like we did so many, like a million small optimizations, like building the software and the hardware, training our team to actually like make that happen. I think like, that's what I took away from like part 1, which is like, okay, on demand, this is how it works.
Well, this is just a personal curiosity, but do you think like DoorDash, Uber Eats, like, are those models actually sustainable, like at scale? Like, because everyone says the unit economics are terrible. It's like the pennies margin, you're squeezing everyone, you're squeezing the delivery person, you're squeezing the restaurant. Like, yeah, and you've lived it. Like, I'm just like, what do you think?
I think they're like, I think there is a market, right? The way I think about, and hopefully we're not getting too deep into something that the audience has no interest in. I feel like with a startup, a lot of times like it's like price exploration, meaning like what is the right price point takes a long time to arrive at, right? Like Uber started as like a black card. Every ride is like $100, $200. And then they swing to the very low end, like $10. You can easily get a ride in San Francisco. Now everything is back to like $25. So that's like the journey of a startup, like price exploration, I think. And then like failure scenarios would be like as you explore the price point, you figure like that just price out the market. I think with like companies like DoorDash and stuff, like there is definitely a market. The price is just like much higher. Like right now, when you order, you can just see like all the service fee, delivery fee, it's like higher. And I would like rather they treat restaurants and drivers right and charge me that price when I do have the need. Because like, is it better for me when I did have COVID for a whole week to have DoorDash? Like, absolutely. And statistically people get sick all the time. There's, things happen. So like, I do believe do I want to starve literally in my bed, or do I pay like $50 for some, like, I don't know, faux like noodles or something like to be delivered? I don't have much choice. I need the food to like survive. So I do think, it's just like a matter of like price. And I think there's a market.
Cool. And can you take us through just like, what was your mindset when, I know with COVID happened and it basically, you can't deliver, people just weren't in person during the shutdown for 2020. And like, can you take us through how that experience was? I know even for me, stopping making music was at times really painful, but I also learned and grew a lot. But yeah, how was that process for you of having to pivot because of like such like a worldwide pandemic when you're a drink delivery?
Yeah, like for the audience, I mean, like we had to close down the company basically. There are many reasons, but COVID definitely being one of the reasons why it doesn't make sense because people are remote. It was very devastating for a short period of time. Like, having to do this. I was mostly worried about my team having nowhere to go, but I ended up like I think people found really good places quickly, and there's also the pandemic aid, so things turned out okay. But yeah, for me it was like devastating. And what was really, I remember the day we were shutting down, we sent out an email to all customers, and we got like so many emails like responding to that newsletter like within the hour saying like we got like emails from like Uber engineers like, hey, like, I'm happy to write code at night for free for you guys, so please keep this open. Or like, oh my god, this thing has been real. And then we got like a lot of profanities like fuck, this is like the thing that makes office life bearable, why are you gone, like like it was and then I so like I wasn't really crying during the day, like everything was like shut down, like hey, like let's make sure everything is like done right, wrap things up. But that was like seeing all these emails. I think I just found our upstairs conference room. I was like, oh my god, like I'm gonna cry right now. On the day off. But I feel like, and I was anticipating my team just like, whoa, like this is very abrupt, and we didn't pay like super long severance because it was in a tough spot. Like we did whatever the best we could. But the whole team just like came up to me like, hey, this has been real, I learned so much here. So everything went against my anticipation, most of the things. And that was like what made it really sad and devastating. And then I just spent a few months like at home because it was quarantine,
Oh my
like
gosh,
lockdown,
it's like you shut down
curfew.
and it's literally shelter in place. That's so
Yeah,
intense.
yeah, it's like literally the day.
Oh
And
my god.
then it was bad, but I think I feel like every time I feel deeply wounded, or when I'm like in that very sad state, which is rare because I usually like can laugh about things even if it's like miserable for me. But it was like such deep wounds. I just turned to my bookshelf. There were like tons of books that I never wanted to read, or I'm just like, like, whoa, like I'm not interested. But reading at the time kind of gave me a lot of like, like the off ramp to really process the emotions in the background while I read about like philosophy or a 4-hour work week. At the beginning, when people gifted me that book, I'm like, who the fuck is this guy who works 4 hours a week? That's just like, I don't need that stuff. And I was like, whatever, on the bookshelf, right? Like I just reject a lot of, concepts and notions. But when I was like, oh my god, I'm like wounded, I was like, I need to recover. I'd opened so many of these books and then, start seeing valid points here and there. So that was like a recovery process. It was like painful, but making sure my team, like people have good places to go to, like make intros as I can, talk to people, just make sure like people are taken care of and communicate the hard news with some investors. So it was difficult, but like you said, like the music, right? Like I'd love to hear, how you got through this, like, the phase of like changing career or changing your path from music. How did you
Yeah.
get through that?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're a guest and you're asking me because I feel like because we worked at the same place and kind of that, at least the banking VC background, like all that lifestyle stuff. Yeah, I haven't really talked about it that publicly, but like basically, yeah, when you said devastating, that was probably a really good word. that was like, yeah, I think it was like I kind of look back that it was like I was in love with music and then we had to break up and I think I'm still in love with music, Um
But
it
in
was
a
hard.
different way. Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
yeah.
It's but basically, like, when I look back, it's like I was in LA for 5 years. I learned how to write songs, learned how to mix records, produce records, plan tours, produce albums, perform live. I learned how to like access my subconscious, be more creative, like acknowledge my inner critic and set it aside. And I made a lot of amazing creative friends that are super inspiring, like comedians. I met some psychics on the pier, but like comedians,
Oh my
magicians,
god.
actors, singers, like all sorts of people. And I
And
look back
you've
and
produced
it was like
like
yeah, one of the best times of my life. But it was really painful when it had to end. And it was like a kind of a slow process, because just to take the audience through, it's like I went from playing open mics in San Francisco. You have to like put your name in at 7:30, and then you get picked, and then maybe you're going at 10:30 and you play for 5 minutes. So I went from that, moved to LA, started playing 30 minutes shows that once a month. And then I started busking and then playing like 3 hours at a time every day for like a year and a half. And then I think the things that I like that make me happy, that were really good experiences, were like I sold out the Hotel Cafe, which is like a big singer-songwriter venue in LA, where like John Mayer, Katy Perry, she got her start. I recorded at Sunset Sound, which is like Prince. He recorded Purple Rain. The Beach Boys did Good Vibrations there. The Doors did all their records there. Like I did my Kickstarter, which was like a lesson in vulnerability, putting myself out there, asking for people to donate or pledge money to help me with my art. It was very hard to do, and I did it. And all the love I got from everybody, it still feeds me to want to give that love to other people. Like I experience how that kind of cycle works. And but yeah, I knew everything kind of led up to making my album. And for like 1 to 2 years, I just visualized my release party, putting the album out, having the music videos, doing a tour. And when I did the release shows, I sold out the venue in LA. I sold out the venue in SF. And then basically like right after I sold out and did all those things, I was like, the first thing I thought of was like all the mistakes I made. I was like, oh man, my cousin James couldn't get in because it was sold out. I feel so bad. And, oh, this person couldn't get in. Oh, I said this stupid thing on stage. I can't believe I said that. Like, and I knew that I knew I wasn't going to be like Ed Sheeran, but I think my secret hope was to be really big. But I kind of making it, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be huge, but I was going to put it out there. And even if like 1,000 people buy my CD, I'll be super happy. So that was like my like a clear metric, because I think 90% of bands don't even sell 1,000 CDs. And I was basically busking every day at the Santa Monica Pier, and then people would buy my CDs. But I think ultimately what happened was like, I realized that singing wasn't actually something, like after I tried to improve singing and I did it for like every day for 3 hours for like 1 to 2 years, like I was like, singing actually isn't the thing that like lights me up. It's actually like talking on stage and connecting with people. And then actually when I'm like consulting my musician friends about like the business stuff and how to produce their albums, how to like put it all together and bring the team together, like those things were more exciting for me. So I realized like singing wasn't like my one thing, because I actually met friends where singing literally was like their whole life. Like that's all they did their whole life, and they were so good at it, and that's what lit them up. But for me, it was more like the writing, the business parts of it, bringing people together. Yeah. So I kind of realized, okay, I read The Dip by Seth Godin, and I was like, is this a dip? Is this something I should keep fighting for? And so I wasn't sure. And at the time I was like running out of savings. So I started driving for Uber, and that was actually really fun because I was talking, because I realized
welcome to my gang, like delivering food and
yeah.
stuff.
I was driving for Uber for a few months to keep the
Mhm.
music dream alive. But I was like, man, I got burnt out, and I was like, I need to take some time off and rethink what I really want in my life. So I think I drove like the last month of driving, like there was enough that I saved up where I could go to India to do this yoga teacher training. So it was like a month in an ashram. And it's like, I was like, that's what I need. Like I can just meditate, get healthy physically, mentally. And that's basically what happened. Like we meditated for like 6 hours a day doing yoga. And after the month, my epiphany was like, most people think you go to India to become a musician, but I went to India, and after that I shifted from music to
not like
going back to
become
business.
the like yeah, get out of like being a musician. That is like such a fascinating story. Like I feel like it's so hard to come to that honesty with yourself, right? Like because there's always this like inertia of like, okay, I've been doing this, and then there's like an externally installed kind of like trajectory, and then being able to like get in touch with yourself and like being honest about, okay, like I think like a lot of it has to do with like recognizing the nuance of which part you really enjoy, right? Like it's way too broad to say I enjoy music, and then
Yeah.
right, like there's too many things, and then you kind of like become more nuanced, and then like, okay, I enjoy music in this format. And I think like format is like so important, because doing something you like in the wrong format also like wears you out. And so right, like, by the way, I don't know if you know this, I feel like you knew this back then. You produced so many good music, and we were watching you on your like Facebook like videos, and then we were like watching together, like bunch together at like the office at DCM.
Really?
We're like, oh my god,
Wow.
like Peter Su is gonna be big, and we're like, this is awesome. And, you know, like we just like keep doing that. So I don't know if you know that, but like I feel like I need to bring this up, because
No, thank you.
like, you know, there's a lot of good stuff. And I don't remember, like I remember listening to your song. Was this like, there's like a song called Fish or something, like by Clara? I forgot, like
Oh yeah, Claire
that
C.
you
Fish.
did. Like
That's a
I
cover.
was playing you like on repeat for like 20 times. I was like, this is so good, you know. It touches my soul in some way. So I think like the impact, it's like, for me, like closing Sweet a Little. And by the way, I was so depressed and so devastated, I deleted everything we have online. So like now only things remaining are fan posted photos on Instagram. And like I've heard so many stories of people having Sweet a Little living in their camera roll so many pictures, because every time they get a nice drawing or something, they take a picture. So there's like their life story of like how they joined Airbnb for the first day, or like some people becoming dad for the first day, and like some women becoming a mom. She's like, hey, draw pregnant me, like I'm really happy. So we drew the stick figure, like small stick figure and a big stick figure, like, hey, this is mom. So like I think that, okay, even the outcome is like, this is not like what we expected, but the journey is, I never really appreciated the journey. But then like now in retrospect, you know, I do still, sometimes I go to parties, people are like, what, like you did Sweet a Little, oh my god, are you bringing it back, you know, all these things. And your music, I think, you know, just it touched many people. You've produced like some really awesome stuff, and I remember you were in the news for busking on the beach or something
Yeah,
like that.
Huffington Post wrote me up. That was a nice one. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So hey, you know, for all creators, like the journey and the impact is like, even if the money wasn't there at the end for that chapter, I think it's just so meaningful and right, like valuable for yourself.
Yeah, no, I think subjectively sometimes, like it's the story we tell ourselves, right? Like when I'm feeling negative, then I tell myself I failed. But if I actually objectively look at it, I'm like, oh, I actually achieved like pretty good amount of indie success. Like not many artists can record at Sunset Sound or sell out or play at the Hotel Cafe or sell it out, or like do a small US tour, make these music videos, do a Kickstarter, like, and just be better at performing. Like not many people just actively get better at getting on stage and like facing their fears every time.
Oh, you improved a
And
lot. Yeah. Like at
yeah,
the
no.
very beginning, I was like, oh, hey, some notes are a little off, I think.
Well,
Like
yeah, I still have some intonation once in a while, but
you're like
yeah.
you come such a long. That's why again, like if you can have like a normal person, like whatever, me just like play you singing like on repeat for the 20th time, I'm just like, whoa, like this is amazing.
That, what's funny, you that you bring up the Claire C. It's kind of sad, but I unlisted that video because I was embarrassed by it. It
Oh,
was
I mean,
well,
like
it was too like I felt like it was too vulnerable or too emotional, and
it is very
when I
vulnerable, and
got
that.
back into VC, I unlisted a lot of those.
Ooh,
I took down my Facebook page. It was a rough time. It was a rough time to like get back into business. Um,
that's so
so
like
yeah.
interesting, relatable because like I told you, right? Like I deleted anything and everything related to Sweet a Little. And that was like, I think, like at some part of the healing journey at the beginning, especially when you're depressed or devastated, you're just like, you kind of have this like tendency to hide, it's like, oh my God, like I just want to hide like certain things. And then vulnerability or whatever, like the thing is like, I'm like, well, like maybe this is like too cute, whatever, like doesn't matter. But then that I figure like these are the most valuable things that really touches other people. Those are like the things, it's like as counterintuitive as it sounds. That's like what really, that's like the diamond.
Yeah, yeah, and that's like one thing I wish I did better in music was, there's definitely a lot of things I would do differently, and there's a lot of things I wouldn't do differently, but one of the things I'd change would be I felt like with my writing, I would be 90% vulnerable, but I never got to like 95 or 100 where like you're really just it's really you on that page or you in that lyric. I feel like musically I could put myself in the melody, but in the lyric but so now I think I kind of view everything as I still love music. I didn't love making it a career and putting all this financial pressure on it. I still love creating. I still love writing. I still love connecting with people on an emotional level. So I kind of view doing YouTube and this podcast, it's kind of like my Phoenix Rising. Like
Yeah,
it's
no,
me.
totally.
Yeah. And I also missed the business part when I was always with comedians and like magicians and actors. It was amazing. And I felt like I could wear a tie-dye shirt, and you're supposed to wear a tie-dye shirt. It's like not something I have to
I
hide.
know.
And
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
I was encouraged to be my funky, crazy self. And so, yeah, but I missed the business part too. So I feel like YouTube is a kind of like the integration of those, creative business. But yeah, it took me quite a while to get to this point. Cause I think for me, it was a huge emotional like hit and process to kind of learn from.
Hey, sometimes it's like, hey, if you don't fail big, you're not trying hard enough. I don't know how true that is, but then sometimes I tell myself that it's like, okay, if I bomb really bad at something, it's like that means I'm trying hard. Just like self-soothing talk.
Well, so how did you from shutting down Sweet a Little, like how did you move on and grow, and then what led to starting Picky?
Yeah, so it was not intentional at all. So I was just like being a blob at home playing tons of games online, and like I'm your type of person who is doing community stuff or random stuff on the side for free all the time, like on the weekends. I'm playing games or writing wikis for the community anyways, like, so I was doing that, was playing a lot of games, and then I fell in love with game chats because everyone is at home and there's a pandemic, but then you find a lot of friends. It's like all anonymous, but then like being in games, like I feel like people really connected in a very intimate way during the
Mhm,
pandemic. So I
mhm.
completely fell in love with that. Like, but also like I guess like when you're playing the game, depending on what kind of game it is, like it's different. but the game chats are always like fascinating, and I fell in love, and then I would say good morning, good night to people. They would say that to me, and then we started like woo, like you would. One of the games I was playing is like female dating games. Like it's like a casual mobile game that is a pay to play, really unhealthy. But
Wait, you're dating real people or like a
no,
virtual
it's like
boyfriend?
a game of like dress up and then you play some stories here and there. I was so bored. I've tried so many different games, and that was one of them. And I connected with people there, and then we just like talked to each other, and we had a gaming Discord. And so we moved not only like in-game, like we moved our in-game chats into Discord, keep chatting, everything from life to the actual game to like, hey, I'm looking for a weighted blanket. Like, have you guys tried this? Like, does it feel good? And people are like, oh my God, it feels so nice. Someone's hugging you. Here's like the one I got from Amazon last month. I was so touched by that. Like, okay, but I think so. Like that's kind of how Picky came to be. Like that was like the very early. I really enjoyed people being able to connect on a deep level, on a synchronous and asynchronous level. Because like sometimes like you chat, you do other stuff. You went to like grab some food, and then you come back, you continue the conversation. So I fell in love with the format of chat, and then the connection between people like virtually, because then you find out people are in a different time zone in a different country. And like I apparently now have a few European friends who would let me stay at their houses when I go visit. So you develop real relationships, like friendships. And with Discord, I tried some bots to like solve some of the, I guess, like problems like people mentioned, like, hey, like you mentioned this like weighted blanket last month, like where can I find it? Like content preservation, being able to like say something, but then it gets like people can dive deeper into it, threading. So like being able to expand on topics, all these features. I think Discord has some functionality, but it was not very intuitive. So I made some bots, or I used some like third-party stuff. It just kept breaking. So I decided, me and my co-founder were like, oh, fuck this. We would save more time if we just do an app like standalone. So we did it without like thinking, oh, this is a company, it's a big problem. It was just like,
So
hey, we were doing this,
or like you were solving your own problem and created another chat.
yeah, exactly. So we did that. That's how like it started, and the rest is like kind of, oh, like there's value to other people as well, not just for me, not just for games, right? Like, so yeah.
So it's kind of like you needed a deeper level of chatting that the existing solutions didn't have. So you just made it yourself.
Yeah, I think like making something more simplistic. I think Discord is very good for, it's like the best chat platform for gamers, like digital gamers. Right now, crypto stuff, like they're integrating a lot of crypto features, but when you try to preserve content, maybe it's a good memory, but like when you are creating the content, you're not even trying, you're just being spontaneous, but then everything gets lost, right? Like in WhatsApp groups, same thing, like everything gets lost. And then people later on coming in here, they just see 300 like text, there's no summary or like something highlight that makes it really easy for them to come in to engage in the conversation. So a lot of these like things that I noticed, and I'm like, okay, I think there could be a better format.
Yeah. So in community building, like just getting more into that. So after you've studied all these communities, I know you've hosted on like different subreddits and you've been doing it with Picky. Like, what would your advice be to a creator that wants to start their own community? Like in terms of what should they think about, like platform, tone, like what are the things, there's so many different things to think about, right? Like where should they start?
Yeah, I would say like, if you look at the birth of these online communities, a lot of times it just starts from one enthusiast, right? Who is willing and wanting to do a little bit more to make the lives easier for people. So it's like, okay, if you're a creator, do you feel that way? Like maybe, let's say you're a makeup artist, right? Like you feel like people dig around a lot, people are not getting what exactly they need. You feel like a community, like having a community to share your passion, to answer your questions would be really helpful for you as like a member. You start from there. In terms of format, like, okay, what is the format you're most comfortable with? Like some people are very comfortable with chat, some people are comfortable with like posting, right? Like Reddit. Some people are very into, like, again, like anonymous versus real name. Like if you're very into like, oh, that's my real name, that's my brand, I want everything to tie together. So I think like it's just, I personally, all the communities I've started are just very organic. Like there's a need. Right? Like for me at the time, like this, again, like entrepreneurs to entrepreneurs. Like I was a entrepreneur. I have no idea how to become an actual entrepreneur. Okay, let's gather some people who's like in the same boat or have like share this like problem. Let's talk about it. Let's like do things together. Because I do think like, I think in order to make things happen, you have to actually do things and group activities, and like whether it's like, right, like it's really helpful in getting you from point A to point B, like actually doing things. But then if you're on your own, it's hard to consistently move yourself towards from point A to point B, right? Like you need to do things together. So I would say for creators, if you want a community, it's probably not like, oh, I want a community for the sake of it. It's more like, oh, like I feel this way. Like, oh my God, I have problems. Like for me, as embarrassing as it sounds, like I have problems like brushing my teeth every night. And so I sometimes like hop into one of my communities. I'm like, oh my God, like I don't want to brush my teeth. And then someone's like, hey, let me kick your butt. Go. And then like, you can do this. And then I just end up going, and then I brush my teeth. I come back. I'm like, hey, you know, I love that. So I think like any community needs a purpose to really be valuable. And so like, what is that purpose? That's probably, you know, whoever starts that community is just like very clear about this is the purpose.
Yeah, because and I was telling you a little earlier, like I've tried different, like I really love connecting with people, especially like-minded people, especially because I have so many unknowns with being a creator, and you know, most of my IRL friends and family really don't get what being a creator is about, and probably being an entrepreneur too. Like, so I've like tried different Discords, circle groups, WhatsApp threads, weekly Zooms, and some of them and one-on-one, some of them worked well and some of them don't work as well. Like, but I have been a part of a lot of Discords, like to your point, like where someone's like, we're creators, we should just make a community. And then they have a room with like 20 threads on like thumbnail feedback, gear, like all this stuff. And then it's just a ghost town because it was kind of like it wasn't use case first. It was like
a purpose unclear. Yeah. It's just like an aggregate of things. Yeah. I think like now that we're talking about this, I think communities probably when there's like a common purpose or pain point, right? Like I started one of the communities on Picky Chat is called Shopaholic Anonymous. I started because I was, you know, short on money during the pandemic. But online shopping was it seemed so exciting, compelling. I keep ordering things from like, you know, Amazon, Lululemon. Sometimes like, oh my God, like there's a new LV bag coming. Can I afford it? Absolutely not. Like, did I buy it? Yes. And then now I'm in trouble. Like I'm in debt. And I'm like, okay, I need to curb this. Like I need to stop right here. So I go online, I find people who have this similar pain point. So we started this group and we did a lot of doing together, right? It's like this month we're going to swear by like no buy, or we're going to set a very small budget of $100, you know, and then we keep each other honest. We do like this, like every day, like you didn't spend money, you're like getting yourself a virtual little sticker. It's like, okay, like now I'm collecting stickers. And then we just have people popping in. It's like, hey, like today I lost my sticker because I got this and like hand cream. People are like, no, you need it. It's fine. It's like $5. It's within the 100. and there's also people kind of like hopping in like, oh my god, like I am about to pull the trigger on this like luxury handbag. And then so we would, because the community, everyone shares that pain and they understand, right? Like there isn't some other communities of trolls, they just like, whoa, just fucking stop, or like, what's the problem with you? Like here it's like no judgment zone. Like we would just like talk each other out of it. It's like, oh, the zipper looks kind of weird, or like, what are you gonna use it for? So after like 5 whys, people are like, actually, I don't have a good reason. Okay, like like screw it. So I think like that's like the organic communities, and then you have like different topics that's related to like doing things or helping each other, right? So that's my experience of community building. It's like start from a pain point.
God, it's like a extreme pain point too. Like if you have a real challenge with shopping, like versus like, oh yeah, maybe I might want to talk to someone about it once in a while, but like you actually other people are looking for that too. So pain point and then doing things. Okay, so related to that audience question, I'll pop this up. Valentine asks, my biggest question I have about community building right now is, as a community grows, how do you make sure everyone is there for the right reasons?
Yeah, so I'd say like 2 things. One is when you're pretty clear about what this community is for, right? We talked about the pain point, the purpose. When you're pretty clear about that, when you go share your community or like promote your community, get members, it really drives the way you're delivering your message. And that message you communicate like determines the quality of your members. Because imagine these 2 different scenarios. One is like some of these online scams, like, hey guys, like just join my NFT group. Everybody will get like 10,000 coins if you join. Or like you have like this, community. People are there, but they're there for the money or for the coins. So it's really hard to moderate, like get something healthy, right? Or if you're giving away, like, hey, we're gonna do giveaways like this week, everyone who joins gets like a $25 Amazon gift card. That audience quality is not self-selecting. It's probably pretty bad. So it's like, okay, when you acquire your community members, like the message is, is like, okay, you're targeting the people who have that common pain point. So if the message deviates from that, it's hard as you weave in more people because it's just going to go all over the place. So that's number 1, I would say. Number 2 is the community. There's like a collective consciousness almost for the community, right? I feel like your community also grows. So for example, like for the entrepreneurs community, like maybe at the beginning, like 95% of people are entrepreneurs, right? Like you are doing a lot of events with like real startup founders. Maybe they're like already raised their Series A, Series B. You like bring in actual entrepreneurs. But then over time, as the membership shifts towards like maybe the bulk of it is actual entrepreneurs already, there's like some people who are entrepreneurs, some people are like, I don't know, like decided this is not for them, then your content, the topic does change. And I think as a community owner, you need to like kind of be aware of that. That like communities are made of living and breathing people, and you do advance together. Like, and so the topic does change based on what the collective consciousness is at any given point in time.
So it's not like you just have one mission for the community or one purpose that's fixed. It can evolve it's based on what the people in the group need, not like the original charter.
Exactly. Or the other thing that could be, so for example, the Shopaholic anonymous community, we have grown together. We have curbed our shopping addiction, if you call it that way, because Reddit says shopping addiction. Say like, most of us right now, we don't have a shopping addiction anymore. So sometimes it's like, as a owner, could you bring more people who still have a shopping addiction into the group? Yes. And then you can like have the people who have like gone to the other side, like coach these newer people. Or this could become like a lifestyle group where people are helping each other like find the right makeup, like, or like for example, I I'm thinking of like maybe getting into like painting my nails this year for the first time. I don't know, like these people have a lot of like expertise in terms of what brands to buy, like how I actually do it. So I think it's up to the community owner to decide whether you're like kind of like a school, could be like a university, you know, how like every year you get groups of students coming in and you educate them and 4 years later they leave, or any kind of college, high school. Or it could be like, oh, we're going to be this group of people, but we end up advancing, you know, something like that, or like somewhere in between. So
kind of like you move with the cohort versus it's like a fixed thing that people move through. Interesting. Well, if I'm hearing you correctly, if you start with a pain point, a really extreme pain point, you find the right platform that fits what you want, whether it's like async, real time,
could be video, audio, chat, you know, like Clubhouse is like audio, right? Like if you feel like some, you know, if this is like a alcoholic therapy group that chats every Wednesday night, like you could have your community there. So it's like, what are you comfortable with?
Well, like, let's say for me, right, if I want to start a community that helps creators, because I'm thinking through different things, right? Oh, maybe I should just go old fashioned, do a Facebook group. It's real identity. It's one feed. So there's a lot of interaction in case people aren't always like pinging. And then for me personally, I don't actually enjoy like tons of real time. It's like too much for me. It's overwhelming at times. But like, what's your advice for like, should I just try going to these different platforms and seeing how I like them and then pick the best one, basically the one that fits the best?
Yeah. Like I would say maybe a good place to start is which platform you're most active on. So like I've tried like being just like a member, right? Like, because then you get a good sense of being on the receiving end or like being a member of the community, what it feels like. So if you are on Discord, you're like, well, this is too overwhelming. That's not what I want. Like, I feel like you find out which platform you gravitate towards the most. Like for me, when I found Reddit, I'm like, oh, I love this, like being anonymous. I love being able to go to like oddly specific subreddits, right? To like, it's so specific. Like I don't like platforms that are very vague in general, because then it takes too much time to dig, right? And TikTok, I don't enjoy watching it for too long. Like I do enjoy long form YouTube, like podcasts and stuff like that. That kind of short format is not for my brain. So I feel like, you know, if you feel very comfortable hanging out on this platform in this community, someone else's community, then that's more organic. So you're not forcing yourself to choose a platform first.
Got it. So it's more of like, where do I already hang out and what do I like? That's super helpful.
Yeah, that you feel very comfortable, right? Because I hate, like, for example, I'm just gonna say this. I hate LinkedIn because it could be very triggering. Like when I see everyone being so successful, but then it's like inflated. Anyway, like when you meet people in person, you're like, whoa, like this person is not the same as what I see him on LinkedIn. Like he seems very glorious on LinkedIn. But I do like sometimes, you know, if I know I get triggered, then I don't hang out on LinkedIn feeds nearly as much. I would go to my own like founder groups where everyone's real. Like you know, something is happening, like partnership fell through, like all these real stuff. LinkedIn is like every partnership goes through. Everyone ends up raising a lot of money. You know, you're only seeing the good performative end. It's not helpful for like the psyche, I think, all the time.
Yeah, I wrote
just an example. You know,
I wrote
maybe
a song for my one of my alter egos where he's the hook is congratulations, I really hate you. That's like the chorus, and it's like a parody song, but it popped in my mind when I went to LinkedIn once. But yeah,
that's so funny.
For like, question for you is like, one time I created a creator group for people with more than 1,000 subscribers, so we could all help each other get to the kind of like from, you know, intermediate to a little more beyond that. And then someone from the class just started his channel, and then he joined, and he's like, hey, I'm not at 1,000 subscribers, but do you mind if I lurk? And I'll just be lurking quietly. Like, I wasn't sure what to do. I ended up just letting, because I don't like being exclusive. So I was like, let him just chill. But then at the same time, I do get that's going to kind of water things down if you have a lot of people lurking and not engaging. So I guess, yeah, what would you have done based off of your experience?
Yeah, so like I think realistically I see a lot of groups like start. So let me give you a very concrete example. Like I'm a Lego lover, and you know, you have like at the beginning there's like Reddit, there's like our Lego, right? But then as the sub grows really big, it doesn't really, if you're only interested in like medieval stuff, or if you're only interested in Bionicles, people go start their own thing, like our Lego Bionicles. Right? Like for me, like I don't enjoy spending $500 on a set. Like that's not sustainable for the starving artist. I do mini Lego. So we do like fewer pieces that you reuse your set, you take it apart, you can like make something else. So like a lot of the times where like if we're talking about like a longer time horizon view, I think users have offshoots of group to keep the community high quality. It's probably not realistic to have both quality and quantity at the same time. It is like much better. And same thing as like the Facebook group that I'm on, Rothy's, you know, it's like cute flats for ladies. I have 2 pairs. But there's like the Rothy's addicts group where people have like 15, 30 pairs. There's like, it branches off into, there's like Rothy's Bigfoot, like for ladies who's like size 9 and above. Like you as a community owner, if you're the expert in Rothy's, for example, or Lego, you could like be owning or running like 5 different groups, but each group is like still like sticks to is like true purpose, right? Like for example, Rothy's, like, I mean, if I'm size 10, like a lot of stuff is just not applicable for me. So then like when I'm in the large group, I would feel that it's like watered down because most of the stuff I'm seeing, it's like I can't get it anyway. So that's my feeling of like kind of like you start something, you branch out. If you want to maintain that quality, you kind of do break out small groups. And I've seen creators like hire a team and then manage those like sub communities, but they're still like under like a big umbrella mission or something, like Origin or something like that.
Yeah, so maybe I could have just politely said like here's the link to the other group, which probably is going to fit your needs better. And then
yeah, I think another thing you could do is like just brainstorming. Not sure if this works, just like so like it could be like, well, there's one channel be like sub 1,000, and then when that channel gets really big, you spin off a different group. So that's my approach with like Discord, with like PayChat. If like there's enough people only talking about handbags or something, like okay, maybe we need a separate group. But then it organically starts from a channel or like a few messages. When there's like more messages talking about a thing that our community is not currently talking about, I can create a channel for that, because then you capture that. So you're expanding like that container if that topic becomes really big or a common pain point that you have not uncovered before.
Yeah, and any advice on like what's the ideal range of like how big a community could get before it needs to get split off? Like is it good to just have 10 people in a room? Is it good to have like 50, 100, 10,000? Like
what I've seen, and you know, like we're gonna get nerdy a bit, like the Dunbar number, like people cannot keep track of, or like the natural circle of friends you can have is like 150 people or something like that. I feel like for high quality groups, like a few hundred seems like the right number. And it also has a lot to do with what I call the conversation velocity of the group. If you have like people saying a ton of stuff, like on average, then smaller group makes sense, right? Because as you grow the group, then everything is a huge mess. But then if this is like, oh, okay, like we're the type of group that like we're fairly independent creators, but we still want to have a home, so we check in once a week, then you can have probably like, I don't know, 500 people. So it has a lot to do with the actual use case. I want to say like for example, these like therapy groups, let's say like this is the Asperger's or like autism or ADHD support group, the conversation velocity is so damn high, like it is so hard. So like probably need some sort of like, because like I think for therapy talks,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
so
You're literally
like
talking. Yeah.
the volume of messages is like 1,000 times like a normal other like average community. But then, that's cool because I think people are healing each other. People are really helping each other. So does that make sense? It's like very
Mhm.
nuanced depending on kind of your community.
Yeah. So more, I guess, for creators, I know a big use case, a big pain point is like we all want to get feedback on our thumbnails or like feedback on titles or feedback on videos. And you can go to Reddit and then you can drop feedback. And I think they have systems where you get 1 point for every you give feedback, you get a point, and then someone can give you feedback. So they're trying to make it like a reciprocal system. Like any advice on like, because I've been a part of thumbnail feedback groups, and then it usually becomes everyone just wants feedback. They want to take, but they don't want to give. Like, how do you get that flowing more in a balanced way?
Interesting. Okay, so yeah, like so basically what you're saying, I think some sort of system of social credit would be helping that to scale, right? Otherwise, I can see that running into like the problem you're describing. There without a system, I think it's hard. I think that does require systematic thinking. And so you are picking, so like in Picky right now, we're building a poll feature. We do have like emoji voting stuff. Like it's not the ideal thing, but like you do see this pain point a lot of like, if you're not keeping track, then like things just degenerate into everyone wanting to take and not wanting to give. I think without such system, what you can do. So like the things I've done before is like going back to our superpowers with spreadsheets. I establish some sort of like very external system and then manually track it, or I use Zapier to automate some of those things with like Airtable. So I create a separate system, or I have some sort of like social tracking, like, oh, so and so has been, asking a lot. Like, hey, like you have someone tag them, like, hey, what do you think? Like when someone is like asking for feedback. So it is like pretty manual. And I do think community owners deserve better tools. I think today's like when it comes to feedback, for example, I do think like if you can quickly chat there for like 2-3 minutes, it's so much helpful than like you post something and then maybe people are not responding for like 3 days, and then when they respond, in the comment section, it's very broken. It's a very broken, and so you're looking for some like very short spurts of like, hey, like I just want to jump in, like have this feedback. I'm gonna do a dirty plug. Like Picky allows image, like you can chat more in there. It's very easy to vote, like which is something I've seen that again, like having to build external spreadsheets for my community on Discord. This is we built like some budget tracker for how much stuff you bought. Like people are just like, nobody wants to click into spreadsheets to log things, points. Like it is not, people don't like that.
And like, do you have any sense on what's a general good range for the ratio of like contributors to lurkers? Like I know with like Yelp, I've heard it's like, it's like usually less than 10% are actually contributing and everyone's lurking. But like for an active, vibrant community, any sense on like a good ratio?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I think that is like the general metric you see across, like same thing with Reddit, right? Like you have, I don't know, like just typical for only less than 1/10 of people actually generating content, and like 90% more than that, it's just like lurking, just consuming content, not generating content. I think with Reddit, karma points, all that stuff, it already helps a whole lot because people have like karma points. But I think, and to give you some interesting metric, like for like Picky, what we're seeing is like, 70% of the people are actually like on a daily average, like you're producing content, but then the content production is just like chatting. You're actually participating in discussions. I think it's like the ratio depends on again, going back to the purpose of the group. If you're trying to like, if this is something that is like one-on-one, like on the two ends, there's like one end is like you're sitting in a lecture hall in college, like your professor is like lecturing and you can't really speak, right?
Yep,
Like it's
one to
like
many.
right. And then on the other end is like you're walking into a bar and everyone's like mingling. And that kind of, so like the support group, I would use like, again, like ADHD or like, you know, autism, where like people are just kind of like helping heal each other. So it kind of depends on like what you're actually hoping to do with this group. Like you're educating people and then you're not trying to close feedback loop, or like you're trying to leverage the power of the crowd to like really heal each other and stuff like that. One thing that I love about chat format is it unlocks a lot more attention, which is the rare capital today, right? Like if I'm on TikTok, I'm just like, my attention's like hooked onto some videos, but I could be giving my attention to some other human that's like in need, or just having my attention is like, hey, you can do this, or like, hey, what up, like saying some random funny stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm a believer of like people giving each other attention more than kind of giving eyeballs just to ads, like just to like some 5-10% of the people, because attention is so valuable. But then when you give attention to people is when you actually make real behavioral changes in people. Like again, like the shopping group, right? I'm also in the autism groups on Reddit, so I really like because that's the only way, right? Like if you just take a step back, we're just talking about natural human to human interaction. Like social media is taking a lot away from that. Like the model of like one to many, it really maximizes like ads revenue, right? But then it's taking away that like one to one like human interaction, or like humans like interacting with each other in a group type of thing, which is like really valuable, I think, like meaningful.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like I was listening to Jack Conte, the Patreon CEO, and he's talking about how as a musician, he had like fans coming up to him and they'd be like, dude, your song changed my life. And they feel like they know him so intimately, but he just met them. And then with creators, he was saying like, he's like, yeah, we basically have parasocial relationships or it's one to many. And for me as a creator, I'm still not sure how I feel about that, because I like one-to-one. But at the same time, like content helps you to connect with people, or like at least impact or help people like on a bigger scale. But so my question would be is like, how do you scale that one-on-one interaction as a single person when there could be a lot of people?
Yeah, I think so. To be clear, I think like the one to many, like some creators are made for that, right? So that's they're not. I think like some people are made for that. They love that. They're super good at that. And, you know, you can generate a lot of like attention revenue. Like that's good for them. Not all creators are like that or aspire to be that, right? So I think it's like going back to who you think you really are and what you find meaningful. For me, like I think one really important thing about running a community is making sure no one is left behind, or everyone has some benefit being a part of this community. So they could be not a part of this community, right? Versus like being here, this part of the community. So like, what are they really getting? Again, using a very concrete example, like for the mini Lego sub I run on Reddit, like we have weekly build contests where like some people, they really love like building at a high frequency, like creating new things, like they end up posting stuff, and then the members see that's like really high quality content, right? But then you're like, as the community owner, you're giving people a purpose. Like I pick a community member, I invite them to name one theme word, and then the rest of people, they build for that word, and then we have the entire community vote on who built the best. So then you kind of like, you see layers of like, okay, like some people really love building, some people just love seeing things, but then they can vote. So then they can determine like, who's like first place and all that stuff. So like you kind of like scale that based on member engagement level, right? And does that help? That's like the concrete
So people
example.
that actually curate like the posting, they share the picture, but then everybody that was watching can actually still be a part of it by voting. So there is still like everyone's involved.
Yeah, and we're thinking of like doing something even cooler. So like if they vote on it, we could actually make some of the designs into like real kits, and then everyone can buy them, or like maybe a small amount. So then you kind of like, again, like you're having like very different levels of engagement, but everyone can be engaged, making it very easy to engage, and their vote means something tangible, right? Like they can alter the fate of that entry or whatnot, and people are just like go nuts, like lots of questions and like, hey, debating the rules, like this is not fair, like you can't use like digital fake parts and whatever. And so that's like engagement, right? But then everyone feels like very involved. If you're I think like the non-ideal scenario is like if I just like say, oh, like leave it as is, like people can post when they have something, people don't post when they don't have anything, just leave it as like free running, then the quality and engagement wouldn't be nearly as high. And like we're growing a lot because everyone has something to engage in the community.
Cool. And what do you think about so Professor Gold asks, would you suggest a weekly webinar with Q&A? Have you done that? Like how has that been if you've ever done this?
Oh, you mean like with myself?
Oh, I guess maybe I think he was talking about the creator feedback stuff, or maybe if
you
no, I think I think that's what he's asking.
like asking you whether Peter Sue.
I think you.
I'm lost on like what the role is, like meaning like who's the question and answer, like who initiates the
I'm guessing.
webinar.
Okay, I'm guessing maybe he was just asking for both of us, like kind of what you were doing right now. Oh, so I think he's just how to scale sharing knowledge. And for him, maybe it's like he could do a weekly webinar. Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. Because then,
yeah, I'm a huge fan of, I'm a huge fan of like giving people what they need and what they want in the moment. I think like one reason why I really hated school back then when we grew up is like you are dumped, a lot of knowledge gets dumped on you. You're like, okay, when am I gonna ever use this like piece of knowledge in the future? Versus like when people actually have a need of like, oh, I have this question coming up, and then you give the answer, like versus just like long like lecture or tons of books. So yeah, no, I feel like whatever format it is, like if the community member or like the participant is initiating that question, then like the answer, it's just like much more helpful, right? Because there's a need, and then you're fulfilling that need.
cool. Thanks for the question, Professor Gold. So moving on to just you like some practical tips. What would you say would be the practical tips for any creator, any entrepreneur that's feels stuck? They want to unlock the talent that they have inside. They want to maximize their output. Like any quick tips for that they can apply?
I think like, I don't know if this answers the question. One thing I noticed was about maximizing output, like creative output, is about getting to some sort of consistency. So like I noticed it feels really different if you're doing creative work on the side. So like when I was at DCM, I do drawings on the weekends, whatever. Sometimes like I show them to people in the office. That's like not really, no pressure, no consistent output needed. Like nobody even asked for my painting, like doesn't matter. Versus like if you're wanting to become a professional creator, it's like, okay, now we're talking about surfing your emotions, right? It's becoming really good at surfing your emotions. And the game you play, like at least like for me, I notice is like creating safety, like creating safe box for yourself to stay in, because when you don't feel safe, when you feel insecure, anxious, the creative work just like gets clogged up a lot. And then number two is like, I heard this from Healthy Gamer, Dr. K, and I'm like, okay, bingo, that makes so much sense. So it's like boredom. So consistent creativity, like how do you position yourself to be optimally creative? Safety, boredom. When you feel safe and then you're kind of bored, but instead of turning to TikTok, you're like so bored and you're like, now I want to create something. When you're not safe, you're just anxious. When you're not bored, like you're so occupied, right? Like when you're like, I need to file my company taxes. Where the hell was that expense receipt? You're just like constantly busy, but you can't really be creative. So I think the secret sauce is like creating safety and boredom for you and like consistently, right? And then that breaks down to sub like action. So like if I have no money in the bank, I'm not feeling safe. Okay, I need to create like everyone has their different level of like comfort, right? So some people can be comfortable with like 3 months of savings in the bank or something like, sometimes like people need longer. So I think pushing yourself to feel comfortable it is an uphill battle, right? So it's just like practicing how to build that like safe box for you. Sometimes like it's just about like, am I safe right now? Am I safe in the next 3 days? Am I safe in the next 3 weeks? Like for me, I've gone to like, if I'm safe in the next, like, I don't know, like 3 weeks, I feel pretty comfortable. It used to be 3 years or like, 3 months. And that I just know that I need to go out to first build my safe box. That's like part of building, it is a part of doing creative work, because like all the hard work, like the boring shit that goes into building that safe box goes into like empowering you to be that creator.
I love that. And I like how you touched on the money aspect, because I think even for me, just thinking about, running down savings to be a creator or a musician, it's like my threshold. I've developed more, I've become more comfortable with it, but it still gives me anxiety. Like, and I think for a lot of people that are either in their jobs, they want to keep working it and then doing their creative thing on the side till it takes off. Like, do you have any advice there? Like, would you stay in a job and keep that safety and then do your creative work on the side until it kind of is sustainable, or do you feel more pulled towards just taking the jump? Like, and I know it varies for everybody, but I'm curious, like for you, what you would be pulled to.
Yeah, I think this is such a personal thing, right? Like there's no way, like I was reading some like therapy related books. Like there's no way you can actually lie to yourself. You can lie to other people, but you can't really lie to yourself. Like when you lie to yourself, you just know, and then your anxiety level is like up, right? So I think for someone trying to become creator like full time or like at like a bigger capacity, just kind of getting into, it's helpful to get into that like okay, let me just be honest with myself. Like, am I gonna feel comfortable having 3 months or like 6 months? And when your body tells you like, oh, I'm actually comfortable with this, that's like when that's your personal box. I think everyone, and I think it's important to, the reason why I call it a box is it is very clear and defined, right? Like money in the bank is very clear and defined. It's a number. And my credit card debt is also a number, right? Like, so once you find your like, boundary, like the safe box that you feel safe, then it's good. Like for some people, if you're very comfortable with like 3 days and then otherwise you just hop in a DoorDash, like Uber or something, you can probably start tomorrow because your safe box is there, versus like some people who have like maybe like families to support, like maybe your safe box is probably different, right?
Yep.
From people who are willing to like, who can have the luxury to jump into Uber, like drive Uber for like, 3 days or 5 days or peak hours to actually just like make that work. I know that's kind of vague, but I feel like the framework is more helpful to the audience maybe.
Nice. Yeah. Super helpful. Super helpful. It's funny you mentioned the Uber stuff. Like I remember being in LA and I was hanging out with my friend that was at Uber, and then her coworker was leaving Uber, and he's like, I'm going to go to SF to start a company. And then he basically like moved, and then he found his co-founder like that weekend. And then this is like the upside case, but he started Lug, which has been doing pretty well. Like
Nice.
Crazy. I was like, dude, that's like balls to the wall, like risk. And he made it happen.
Yeah,
Oh,
right. So
yeah.
it's like that safe box for him is like, and I think like that always like fluctuates too. Like I remember during COVID times, like my safe box is like I need to push the walls outside a little bit because I don't know, like seeing people dying and then some people I know, it's just like whoa, like so based on your feeling,
Mm.
at the time or that juncture, chapter of your life.
Super helpful. Well, quick rapid fire. So who's your favorite startup founder?
Randomly, it's Ben Horowitz because I read his book, The Hard Things About Hard Things, and he's just so unlucky being a founder. But I love the book.
Doing the hard work. Nice. Besides DCM, who are your favorite VC investors?
I love my two of my current investors. One is Nico Bonazzos from General Catalyst. He's invested in lots of quirky startups. He's also an immigrant from Europe and just amazing all around. And Charles Hudson from Precursor Ventures. They're pre-seed seed firm, backs lots of minority founders, immigrant founders, neurodivergent founders. So I really love them. And DCM Osuke Honda has been amazing all along. So yeah.
Yeah, Osuke is the man. Favorite online resources for entrepreneurs?
I think YouTube. I've self-taught like a lot of stuff, like most of the stuff from YouTube. If you have a need, some man is gonna teach you like how to change my light bulb, including. So
Yep, Yale University of YouTube. What's your favorite software that you use as a founder?
Figma is absolutely my favorite. Like being able to design online on the web, like no more Adobe desktop software. Like, since
Yeah,
years ago, like I love Figma. Yeah. Sorry,
favorite book?
Adobe.
No, yeah. Favorite book you read in the last year?
It's called What My Bones Know. It's about recovering from complex PTSD. It was recommended to me by another female founder, very strong woman I respect and love. For me, having some trauma to work with, just, to work through, like the book was amazing. Again, it's called What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu.
Awesome. And favorite course, if you've taken any this last year?
Have not taken any structured course. No.
Cool. If your place was burning down, what 3 things would you grab first?
It's gonna be boring. My phone, my wallet, and my emergency backpack. I'm ready to go.
Nice, not the keys. I was gonna think.
Oh, my place doesn't have keys. So
nice. Favorite quote or a quote you like?
I'm probably gonna butcher this. It's Carl Jung said something like the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and so that's my favorite.
Wow. If you could jump into a time machine and go to any place for 30 minutes or time, who would you talk to?
I would probably go back in time to talk to my dad when his childhood trauma happened and just like tell him everything's okay.
Wow. In terms of like just takeaways, is there anything else you think our audience out there should think about based off of our conversation?
I think it's just not simply, this is hard. Love yourself and know that you will be the number one, the best at being yourself. Nobody can beat you in that. So I think that's like one of the key things to know.
Got it. And yeah, I know like Picky Chat is on the App Store, the Apple App Store. Yeah, what's the best way for people to connect with you and learn more about Picky?
So as a part of this podcast, I just created a new group called The Inner Creator, like coinciding with what we talked about this, right? So if anyone wants to come chat, I am Mercury in that group and in some other groups. So I'll share the link. And then my email is just mercury@pickychat.com. People can email me. Sorry, we don't have Android. We're working really hard for it. So
Got to fight for the green bubble. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mercury, for joining us. I know this was like a really long, deep conversation. We covered a lot, and I think I really appreciate you just being super sincere about, all the experiences you've had and just being a founder and a creative and community builder. Like, you've been through a lot and then you've seen a lot. And then I just really appreciate you sharing that with the whole audience, like everything you've learned. So
Well, thank you.
yeah,
I mean, we didn't make each other cry today, so that's maybe reserved for later. I feel like there are some points where like we kind of are on the verge of like, oh my god, if we keep going, we're gonna cry.
that's
But
the new name. The podcast title retitled "The Devastating Moments of the Creative Journey."
anyways, well, thank you so much. This has been fun, and I hope it's helpful. Keep up the good fight. I love your YouTube channel. I'm a huge fan.
All right. Thanks. Thank you, Mercury. Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Okay. Bye.
bye for now.